our fair. This is our maintenance supervisor. He's our maintenance supervisor.
You gotta keep plugging, you know?
I'd like to call the Danville City Commission and the Boyle Fiscal Court Special Call Joint Meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, September 12, 2023. The time is a little bit past 1 o'clock p.m. But we are here, we have one real agenda item, and that is the Parks and Recreation Capital Planning discussion. But we're going to have a presentation by Mr. Cody and his team, along with Errol Coffey, our city manager. And after that presentation, we will then open up the meeting for questions and...
Mayor, can we know who they are? The Cody team.
Oh, well, they'll introduce themselves, yes, sir. They're always on the top of things like that, so they'll introduce themselves. What I was about to say, there was a real gist of this meeting is to sort of update the coordinating commission about where we are with Parks and Rec in our community. And I know by the end of that, all of the elected officials are going to be a part of new Parks and Rec directors. And he will be hopefully in place by the 1st of October, and be joining us in this community, and will become a very vital, very important part of this discussion. So, think about to do this. Mr. Collins, why don't we start with you, and go around the table and introduce ourselves to these guys, and let these guys introduce themselves to us. I'll keep me on your hook.
I've never seen Kevin Caldwell with the City Commission, Danville City Commission.
Rick Sayers, City Commission.
Jenny Holland, City Commission.
Jason Cullen, Magistrate.
Shirley Bottom, County Judge. Don Teague, City Commission.
Caldwell, Fiscal.
Barry Harmon, Boyle Fiscal Court.
James Atkins, Danville City Commission.
Steve Sleeper, Boyle County Magistrate.
Tom Ellis, Boyle County Magistrate.
Earl Coffey, City Manager.
Hi. Is this thing up there? It is. All right. Hi, John Cody. I'm the Director of Landscape Architecture for Fair Background.
I'm Chris Manning. I'm a landscape architect with Human Nature. Joe Guthrie, Principal at Love and Motor Architects.
Okay, Mr. Cody, you want to start your presentation?
Would love to.
Wait. We need to welcome Mr. Cody back to Danville. You all know he's the native Danville High School, Boyle County High School graduate, and done lots of work, neat work in our community. So.
Would you get thrown out of one and have to go the other?
Oh, as long as you
You gotta be quick, right? Full disclosure, I'm trying to get a presentation PDF created, so I think it's a great opportunity though to introduce myself, the team, and how we got here. So like I said, my name is John Cody. Grew up on Boone Trail. Am a proud alum of Jenny Rogers, Dayton Middle School, Danville High School class of 1988, which is a lot longer ago in the past than I'd like to admit. Center College in 1992. Very excited to be here. Mom and Dad still live in the community, but I always looked for the opportunity to come back home and bring the assets and skill sets of one of the most outstanding design teams back here and leverage those assets for the betterment of the community that I still call home. So when we were given that opportunity to come back, I brought Chris and Human Nature, which in my opinion is one of the, if not the preeminent, one of the top 2 design firms for parks and recreation in our region, and I would argue nationally, although he'd probably kick me under the table for saying that. And Hub and Weber, who embraces that same desire for high design and quality and thinking outside the box. I'll let them describe a little bit more about their practice, but having the opportunity to come home is something that I'm not sure everybody gets to do. And so it's a blessing for me to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity to address this group. So with that, Chris, I'm going
Mr. Cody, before you all continue, I need to correct a mistake I just made. I will return to the folks in the audience and ask them, if they give them their time this afternoon, to introduce themselves. And I know the Parks and Rec Committee members are here, and I know one of our former Parks and Rec directors here. So you guys started back there with Mrs. A.B. Albright-Berry. You want to start introducing yourselves to the folks?
Sarah Berry with Parks and Rec.
Ernest, Parks and Rec.
Ron Ballard from Danville Schools, Chief Operation.
Mark Morgan, Parks and Rec Committee also. We have nearly all of our members here. I just want to thank the Fiscal Court and the City Commission for including us. I have to leave early. I have an orthopedic surgeon appointment, but we're having a meeting tomorrow, a specially called meeting, and Mr. Barton, our new Parks and Rec Director, will be at our October 4th meeting. And if you want, it's open to the public, and if you want to, it's a chance for our committee to have an exchange with him. And if anyone wants to attend, let us know. We may need to get a larger room. Thank you.
I'm Connor Fair, the Parks and Recreation Maintenance Supervisor.
I'm Amber Schartzer, the Recreation Supervisor.
Oh, no.
Oh, go ahead. You don't want to.
I'm John Drake. I'm currently a member of the Danville Fiscals.
I'm Stephanie Boyle, I'm the Athletic Supervisor.
Dan Millette, Planning Commission.
Joe Marie Lay, Parks and Rec Committee.
Rick Hampton, Finance Director for the City. Ashley Ritter, City Clerk.
There you go.
David Kelly, Park Committee.
I thought I said I was senior.
You ever wanted to see the board?
All right, guys. You don't want to get back. Put on the back.
David. Let's get on it.
All right, so we're going to have to be creative here, but we'll get this done. Let's see here.
Time for us to introduce yourself.
Jamie Gaines, Magistrate of District 5.
He had lots of time, lots of guests. My favorite was Jim White.
Coming soon.
Yes, so good.
We'll attempt to get this started. Okay, so now we're ready. Thank you for your patience. So what we want to do today is understand, number one, the foundation upon which all of this is built. What that means is understanding, well, Mr. Gay, doing quite well. Sorry, on this side. Understanding the 2018 master plan, which is really setting the foundation for all of the work that we're doing. Understanding what's happened since that master plan came online and was adopted. And then bringing you up to speed about the projects that we currently are working on. Ultimately, though, we want to discuss with you how to move forward. Understand potential collaborative opportunities that are out there for us to strengthen our community as a whole. And then, of course, we'll open it up to questions afterwards. So it's important to understand where we started with the Parks Master Plan. So there was a mission statement, which was that Parks and Recreation in our community is to provide a unified park system and recreation system that improves the quality of life for all the residents of Danville and Boyle County. And that vision is inspiring excitement. utilizing a unified system of parks and events to provide opportunities for interaction, entertainment, while fostering pride and wellness. Out of that master plan, there were certain goals, wants, and desires that were established. The first goal was to modernize our parks, to provide a variety of parks with modern facilities to serve as a destination for communities, or for all of the members of our community and for their recreational needs. Two is improving connectivity. It's important that we have important connections between parks, nature, and the community itself. Enhancing the programs and events that we offer as a community. Offering a variety of recreational programs and events for all users, regardless of age or abilities. And effective management and operations. And I think that's something that has been ongoing. The community told us that aquatics, spray grounds, and a community pool was one of the highest priorities that they had in 2018. That better coordination for park services, events, and festivals was desired. Upgrades and better utilization of existing parks and programs. And, providing better access to underserved areas. So let's make sure that we equitably distribute our assets for all of our citizens. Improving indoor recreation, so that is a recreation center. What does that mean to us and where would it be located? More and better connected trail systems that celebrates our natural open spaces. We have so many natural assets, so let's make sure that we're leveraging that. Of course, we've got tournament quality athletic facilities, something that our community is steeped in, a lot of championships, etc. Safety and security. Obviously, if you're going to an open space, we need to make sure that we embrace that. Upgraded website for distribution of information effectively, and then additional facilities for the expansion of Millennium Park, which is one of the crown jewels of our system. So the influencers, right? So what's happened since 2018? That's longer ago than I'd like to admit. The Elizabeth Park has been improved. We now have the streetscape improvements along Main Street. Jenny Rogers was purchased and now offers an opportunity to be a critical asset. The fairgrounds was purchased, which allows us for that expansion of Millennium Park. And the Lexington Avenue Spray Ground has come online, which has been very popular among our residents. So what's happened as well is that we've gone through a pandemic, which has placed a higher emphasis on our parks. They're more valuable, so they need to be cared for. The Bunny Davis Center, honestly, it's becoming more and more expensive to maintain it. So what does that mean for us at this point? And then we're dealing with supply chain and the cost of construction, right? So it's always moving forward. Very rarely do we see those things come back. So we've got to be strategic in how we allocate our resources. When we came on board in 2021, our challenge was to build upon the recommendations of the master plan, establishing a clear strategy and realizing that vision that was set forth. But then imagining the possibilities, right? So we have a checklist of things to do, but how can they get done and how does it separate us from everyone else in the United States? We knew that we had immediate needs. For instance, the Boyle County High School softball field was going to take over the area that housed their tennis court facility, and we knew that Bunny Davis, if it were to go offline, which is still a question, we need to provide that asset within the community. So there was an opportunity to build a tournament quality facility that could support both the city schools, the county schools, and then the residents. Jenny Rogers was purchased, and we know that childcare is a desperate need for us. So the thought was, let's leverage that asset, that educational-based asset, in a way that continues to support our young families. Michael Smith Park improvements, that park is a shell of what it was that I remember, again, a lot longer ago than I'd like to admit. But it's a shell of what it once was, which was a community asset. So what can we do with that? And then determining what to do with Bunny Davis itself. So with that, our group worked with city staff and determined that we need to build upon the 2018 master plan. We need to meet the current needs and opportunities of our citizens. We need to engage key community partners and stakeholders in strategic ways to maximize the efficiency, results, and investment. We need to engage the full community in thoughtful and meaningful ways, making sure that everybody's voice is heard. We need to be equitable in our distribution of our investments to make sure that all members of our community are benefactors of what we do through our park system. And we need to improve the connectivity between those parks and our key cultural and community assets. And then we need to create something that celebrates our unique history, not something that you can find down the road, not something that you can find in the state, or something that you can find in the region. It has to speak directly to us. It has to mean something to us. That's what's going to separate us from everyone else and have us become a destination of preference. It's going to support our economic goals and aspirations as a group. So what I'm going to do, or I'll try, is pull up the slides that you have. So bear with me here.
Yeah, thank you. So some of the questions that have been raised, what we want to do is also communicate the first thing that would really happen after the 2018 master plan was done, which was the city and county got together and developed the joint participation agreement. And so what I wanted to take a minute to update everyone on the financials and since then. So we've included the agreement there on your desk just so you can see it. But we had two main things. Is the purpose statement in it on page 2. Begins with the statement, in order to develop parks and recreation, a parks and recreation system that will provide high-quality programs and facilities for all residents of the city and county and its visitors in a fair and safe economical manner. And then we had a list of goals. So that was our purpose for this agreement, right? Is to improve our service to the community. And then the guiding principles were the idea of doing things efficiently with cost effectiveness in mind, consolidating our system of operations, right? And so those things are, that's the purpose of that is just to try to picture frame what the agreement, the core value of the agreement, right? And so then the main thing at the time that was discussed was we knew that there was these outlying issues like aquatics and the other things identified in the master plan. And the position that was taken at the time was, well, city, you all figured that out and then come back to us when you kind of get an idea of what you want to do, right? And so it's not to say that you all weren't participating or were, but what we did was we developed a capital plan or facilities plan. This group has done a great job with carrying us through that conversation, through that process. And so we're reporting back to you today on what has developed in their thoughts. And we want to go from here. We want to see how county wants to participate long term. What do you all want to do? And so this is really a follow-up on a conversation that started in 2018, right? There have been steps along the way. So we've given tours of the fairgrounds to different court members at the time, and we've talked a lot about it intermittently. But so this is really a continuation of that original conversation. I want to make sure that that is in context. This is not a new conversation. Some of you listen, you know, we have new commission members and new fiscal court members, but this is really a continuation of the 2018 results, right? So then if you go to the next slide is the financials as simply as we can communicate it today, since 2018, really, since the merger, really, into the city department, okay? So you have, and you'll get these slides. I know you don't have them printed today because there's one or a huge file, but we'll get these to you hopefully before the end of the week, so you can have and hold them, including these slides. And so we've had 3 full fiscal years since the merger, beginning in 21, which was fiscal year 21, which was July 1st of 2020. That was during the pandemic. That was a weird time. And so we'll start with that year, but communicate that the city contributed in that year $637,000. Parks and Rec generated $436,000 in revenue, which total revenue for the operations of the Parks and Rec facilities was $1,073,000, right? And so against that year, between now, the important part is the expenditure column on the operations side. The agreement that was established had the county investing in the operations of Millennium Park, the Bunny Davis Center, and the pool, right? Understanding that staff was doing the programming too, and so that there would be an extension of service beyond just the facilities through the programming, right? Because of this funding the staff, okay? And so the total cost to operate those three things that year was $890,000. And so then we spent another $4,000 in our community parks like Jackson Park, Calvin Street Park that year. And so you'll see then total operating expenses that year was $894,000, right? So then the next year, 22, you all gave $322,000 because the court did per the agreement. And the city put in that year $898,000, and the revenue generated was $360,000. So total contribution into the Parks and Rec fund, which we did fund the county, was about $1.6 million. Okay, and the total expenditure of those three entities, the pool, the Bunny Davis Center, Millennium, was $1,072,000, and then we spent $46,000 in community parks. So then we, at that year was when we started with the firm here, started in their effort, we spent $102,000 by the end of that fiscal year towards this end, right? So we spent in total $1.2 million that year against the total put in the pot of about 1.6, okay? So then in last year, you all put in 344, which was a slight increase based on the COLA, which was described in the agreement. The city put in $3,352,000. Revenue generated was $374. And so then a total operating expenditure of Millennium Park, Bunny Davis, and the pool that last year was $1.359 million. Okay, $1,359,000. And we put in an additional $72,000 community parks, and then $3.9 million into capital, for a total investment in the Parks and Rec system of $5,362,000, right? So today, in the budget we're in this next column, I won't repeat everything. You all can see that when you get it. So what I want to do here is point out that, to confirm to the court that you all not really, your money is stayed exactly where you indicated, right? You all put in money towards operations of those three facilities, and you can see that the expenditure of those facilities are proportionally higher than what you are putting in by a good amount, right? And so as we move forward into the future, we want you all to think about how you all want that to change, if at all, in the future, right? So we know through the 2018 work, through their work, that there's things we need to be doing and things we need. And so the easiest thing for me to point to is the baseball field. We really don't have, in our Parks and Rec system, we have a lot of hybrid fields that we've set fences at distances, but we really don't have a pure 15-year-old baseball field that is of the, not quality that high schools or that would play on. So we struggle to have a 15-year-old league, right? 13, 14, 15, we have a hard time servicing those age groups, right? So then aquatics, for example, is another question. What do we do with our pools? How do you all want to think about your role in those efforts in the future, right? So this is what's happened. This has been the financial contribution. So as they continue through their presentation, think about, how do we pay for aquatics in Boyle County and Danville? How do we pay for these facilities that we need? What role do you all want to play? I hope that makes sense a little bit.
No, it does make sense, but it's kind of hard
Yeah.
after so many years of having this agreement to now just seeing kind of these numbers. And the first thing I ask is, A, how did the contribution for Danville jump to 3.3 million? Like, I'd be curious of what actually was done. Like, why did you contribute that? Like, what things have happened for you to have to pay $3.3 million? If I look around town, but also, why is the revenue going down each year? You know, you're wanting to build a baseball field that you would think would bring in revenue, but your projections are lower than what it was in 2021.
In the year we're in, that's probably. But so, to your point though, we do need to expand those programs, we need to expand that operations, we need to improve our strategies towards increasing revenue. Those are operational changes, which we hope our new Parks and Rec director can bring to the table and make suggestions along with our existing staff. That's done a great job.
No, and that's what confuses me, so because, like, I think that Parks and Rec has been more vibrant over the last several years than it has in a very long time. You know, and it might just be the fact that, you know, my kids are participating a lot more. I see a lot more kids participating. I see a lot more options of things for kids to do, you know, do programming that, Stephanie and their staff has done. I was just shocked to see those numbers be lower than what they have been in the past.
Yeah, well, and that's something that, again, we have an expectation that Tommy has demonstrated us through the interview process, and Judge Baldwin was there, that we believe that he understands that dynamic of we need to generate some revenue, because he's had to do it in the system that he's come from, right? So we understand that problem too. That's, we want that to be improved. But again, the money is invested in capital, in facilities. The tennis courts, for example, Jimmy Rogers is under construction. So we're looking at those things, and as we go forward, their calls to design some of the future things and to do the evaluation that's going to be on the screen. So I just want to put this. I'm not wanting to drag us into a detailed conversation.
No, me either. But this is a good time to talk about where we need to reactivate our Parks Committee.
Right.
And somehow I thought it was in the agreement, but it wasn't. But these are things that we can go back and actually help educate our other magistrates too, to say, this is what the city is doing to build a Parks and Rec program. We need to get on board. That's why it's an imperative committee to have.
Yeah, so let me do a bit of follow-up here too, because at the very least I'm a little confused. I graduated from Little League to what was Babe Ruth 100 years ago when I played. And Babe Ruth was standard field. I'm passionate about getting more parks, not only in Danville, but all across the county. Since I have a very large western Boyle district. Since I know, and I've had this drummed into me many, many times, that Center now has a premier complex that's virtually completed, where they absolutely plan to have KHSAA tournaments of all the variety of sports there. My big question as a fiscal conservative watching our taxpayer dollars is, why do we need a new ballpark for 15-year-olds when that's going to be available for statewide tournaments?
The easiest thing I can communicate, and it's everything has a capacity. So if you have a 2-inch pipe, you would argue that an 8-inch pipe can serve more water. You agree with that? Well, it's the same thing with all of your facility system.
I've never been in that Collins district that way.
Yeah, right. And so it's like that with everything you do. Everything has a capacity. So if you have one field, then you can have one game. If you have two fields, you can have two games. So part of what their process is to analyze our demographics, analyze what our should-be participation rate is, and we have to effectively understand how many kids we have in Boyle County, and so what's the participation rate? We may have 300 people in basketball, but we should have 800 people based on the statistical data that everybody else has. So why do we not have an extra 400 people? So we want Stephanie and Tommy to get in there and try to figure that out. Some of these things may be limiting by facilities and things like that, but I don't want to pollute our conversation today with some of those details.
I don't think that's pollution. Gentlemen, have you taken into consideration in your pre-planning this complex over at Center College?
Well, let's do this. We're talking about Parks and Rec for city and county. We don't control what goes on in the college. They might be doing all kinds of tournaments and stuff. We're talking about fields and things for kids to do on a regular basis every day in our league. Center's not going to let us have a 15-year-old a baseball league, softball league, in their facilities. We got to talk about what's for our kids. Center's great to host a tournament, but with one field, they're going to be ready to know how they host a tournament as well.
Right.
One full-size baseball field is communicated, but, yeah.
It's,
So that's developed for college play, because they're college.
it's developed for college play, but like, so for example, Tom, just not to dive into the weeds, but like, so when Boyle County is doing their softball tournament, they use Center's Field as well as their fields, as well as sometimes the other fields that are available to them in Millennium Park to host their one seasonal tournament. So when you're doing something like that, a lot of times you need all hands on, you need all the fields, right? So it's purely about capacity, but you know, let this play out and let's get into your questions when you see their full game. So they have a strategy, they have some ideas. So let's get into those and see if some of your questions are answered with those. I wasn't wanting to like lead the conversation on what these guys do. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't want to get past today without reporting to you all financially what has transpired since this agreement. And so that's on the screen really in 20,000 foot view for you. And then, you know, as we go forward, you all have additional questions, we can get into that in the future. But I just wanted to provide information as we went.
Agreed, but my main thing is that we need to have a kind of communication that was set in this agreement. It needs to happen that way. There's not sticker shock when we start going for a presentation. That way we know, why this money is needed. It's not in a big debated form like this. And we kind of come into this better educated.
Yeah, I don't want to debate about what's been insured, what hasn't been insured. It's all public record. Every meeting these guys got prepared, all the input, that's all from public. We've never done anything as a community where we're giving this city and county input. So let's not get into that mud. The mud is that we clear it out and try to find out what's needed so we can move forward. We can sit here all day long and talk about those numbers. Those numbers are real. Those numbers have been spent.
There's a lot of decisions to be made about what's to be spent in the future.
Yes, that's
right. And that's kind of the dialogue where we're sitting. Right?
Yeah, but I guess my point, Mayor, is black and white. This is what's supposed to happen per the agreement.
Yes.
And it hadn't happened. And it could be public record, but when we signed an agreement that says things are going to be provided, that's what we expect. We shouldn't have to go back to the public record to go for it. It should be per the agreement provided to us.
You don't have to give them I don't think
I don't think there's
anything you want to know about Parks and Rec.
I want to be very.
This building commission, the building board, has been available at a request of anybody in the city. Oh yeah, that's going back. Let's not go back, let's go forward. Anything you want to question about these numbers? I say you can't question because they're real. Okay, so let's move forward. You guys have a presentation to make. The key about the money is that, let's say you found out about it yesterday. Well, you got next year to borrow sometimes. Well, let's move forward.
Yeah, so that's that, and I'll continue as you transition into the follow-up on those.
Good. Okay, so what I'd like to do is introduce Chris to share with us kind of the first steps that we took, right? So with that, Chris, I'll let you start.
So one of the fun things about working in parks is there's a lot of dimensions to it. And there's a macro and a micro to it. There's a long term and a short term. And so it's very important as we interact and share ideas and talk about needs that we work at all of those levels together, right? And so it was interesting to us, interesting to me, to think a little bit about where Danville is and what makes that unique and special. And so, as we kind of use Danville as a center point, in this region, we started to look at proximity to other communities. And so as we think about things like tournaments and cultural assets and stakeholders and partners and things like that, you know, it's just good for us to know that we have this constellation of other communities and assets around us. And we are the center of that universe. And you can get a sense of the distances there. So, you know, these are important kind of awareness building things, and you might see something out of that that I don't see, and I might see something out of it that you don't see. But just to think at that scale is really important, okay? And then the next image is kind of zooming in to the next level. I mean, we were pretty blown away, honestly, about all of the assets that you have nearby from a cultural and natural resource standpoint. I mean, you are really, really blessed. And so, you know, to really start to shine a light on those assets, to document them, and then to start to think about, okay, what makes a collection of parks a park system? It's the connective tissue that holds it together, right? And so you have the opportunity to start to build a connected framework that connects all of these assets together. And you have stream corridors, right, and historic trails and roads and off-road trails. And you've started to delve into a lot of those things, right? But it's important, I think, as we do our work on the micro scale, always step back out and look at this macro and then zoom back in. So it's back and forth. So we were starting to conceptualize a connected framework that started to connect your assets together. This was like the first pass at that. And then we zoomed in a little closer and really started to look at kind of the community core, if you will. And one of the reasons that some of the communities are underserved is because there's boundaries. There's challenges that cut some of the community or some of the county off from some of the other assets. You know, it might be a train corridor, for example, or it might be a stream or a bypass or something like that that kind of cuts some of the community off from easy access, equitable access. So it's important for us to talk about those things and to come up with creative solutions for those things. And then, you know, one of the ideas as we worked on Michael Smith Park, you know, we were really blown away by your historic core and by Constitution Square and all of that. And it's like, well, what's your origin story? Well, there's something about there was a historic spring, and that historic spring is called Town Branch. And that Town Branch was a reason that people stopped here, and there was a watering hole here. There's a whole story about that, but we were just kind of looking at, well, what if you created a trail loop that connected Michael Smith Park, all the historic assets along 2nd Street, and Constitution Square, and it really kind of connected your historic core together. Wouldn't that get exciting? So again, just as we do our work on individual pieces, sometimes we discover these little opportunities that we feel like we should come back and share with you. Some of them will get traction, some of them won't, and that's okay.
So, thinking about the master plan, the 2018 master plan recommendations, and considering recent developments such as the purchase of the fairgrounds and Jenny Rogers, we focused on the things that we knew were immediate needs. One was the Jenny Rogers Community Center, specifically childcare. Michael Smith Park renovations, defining what aquatics means within the community. At the beginning of 2018, or in that master plan, the idea was to have a mega aquatic facility. But now recent trends nationally are to decentralize aquatics and distribute them equitably around the community for several reasons, one of which is operating costs. Unfortunately, we've got an example of that down the road. And being able to go out and touch each member of the community in a unique and special way. And so what does aquatics really want to be in Danville? What is palatable in Danville, and how are we going to best serve our citizens? And then Millennium Park and the fairgrounds, the opportunity there was to help support the local schools through a tennis facility. But it was dual purpose because it also supports other members of the community. So what I want to do is run through at a high level each of those to bring you up to speed with what we've been working on. So there was a design process that included community engagement through an open house and engaging a task force to start to understand what some of the desires and wants were for this facility. The master plan came out of the feedback that we got through that public engagement process, and a schematic design was developed in June of last year, and we defined what phase one was, again, making sure that we were meeting that need of childcare as the first part of this. But what we did is took the information from that public input and generated several concepts, and there were several items that came to top of mind. The idea of a front porch that would face Main Street that has a nice view up the new improvements on Main Street. You get a nice view actually up that's in front of the school, a drop-off and pickup area. Obviously, if you're going to have childcare, you've got to think about that. But then trying to channel that educational foundation of Jenny Rogers. What we found was there are a lot of common assets, common stakeholders that are very interested in a community center. And I love the idea of a community center in Jenny Rogers that continues that educational mission, but supports all of our community. And that can be all ages, all abilities, supporting performing arts, things that, are desperately needed based on the feedback that we got. And from that, we have the master plan. And Chris, I may have you walk through the master plan just at a high level for Jenny Rogers.
So we work on parks and park systems throughout the Midwest, and I'll tell you that this Jenny Rogers Community Center concept is really powerful and unique. I've never really run across anything quite like it. And so as we worked on it, this idea that we needed daycare, it was a big need. The main wing facing Main Street was really set up well because it had existing restrooms in each classroom, and so it really fit well into the daycare kind of model. And so then we found a partner for that, and we started to talk about outdoor play that would be associated with that. The gym, meanwhile, was already starting to be used, and the city and everybody, sports leagues, has done a great job, really making the most out of that gym. I think there's even pickleball in there now, so it's serving some immediate needs because we also know we have needs for an indoor recreation center. So this gym is part of that answer, right? And then the rest of the building is really talked about being kind of a mix of community partnerships. The Arts Center, the library, even the Extension Office was in several of those meetings, talked about having a presence in the community center where they could provide certain programs and services to the community. So that wing of the building is likely to be more organic and evolving over time, which is awesome. And then the rear yard of the facility is intended to be a courtyard with an all-persons field, an outdoor classroom, and then some outdoor patio space that can be multiple use. There's a community garden that was talked about. So again, first blush, a lot of kind of a mosaic of unique uses to meet the community needs. So it's a multi-purpose building that can evolve over time. I'll let Jim talk about phase one.
Yeah, so I think I'll echo a lot of what Chris said earlier. Our goal here was to repurpose the existing facility in the most economical way possible, and there was a need for childcare, and it's a school, and so there was an obvious benefit there. I think ultimately developing the complex as an anchor to Main Street was another goal, and making it something that a large swath of community could use. And so with the child care, you cover a lot of different demographics, right? So as a beginning point, that made a lot of sense to us, getting people in there. I think gym is already getting a lot of use, and then there are future functions for a coffee shop or other community amenities that might assist. So the first phase of this is the daycare. We're installing new restrooms, and then I think 9 classrooms and office space, restrooms in each classroom, access to a play area in the rear. So again, using the existing structure really effectively to adaptively use it for the child care.
Just like the partnership between the city and the county, this community center is a great kind of framework for additional partnerships.
With Michael Smith Park, again, our process included engagement, public engagement, so there was an open house, an online survey was distributed among the community, and then we had boards to solicit feedback at the Soul of 2nd Street Festival last August. The master plan was created last year, and phase 1 is currently out to bid. We're hoping to award that project at the beginning of October. With Michael Smith Park, we explored different configurations, but what we knew from the survey and feedback was that water play was a feature that was desired, that parking became a primary concern for the residents of Baywood. Sports courts could be incorporated into this. It was rich in sports courts when I was growing up. A playground, a civic green and pavilion for community gathering, for church festivals, family reunions, etc. 2nd Street improvements, so right now there's a bus stop on the other side of 2nd Street, so the kids have to get across 2nd Street. It's in desperate need of safety thought, so improvements there and for that entrance into the park itself. Celebrating Clark's Run, which is actually a very high quality waterway that runs through our community, and then bringing back the rock wall, which was identifiable for that community. As a matter of fact, I think that may have been the most commented on aspect of the park itself. So in the master plan, the idea was to have a series of rooms, almost like a pearl necklace, that includes going from, it would be on your left, custom water play feature, playground, that civic lawn and pavilion that overlooks Clark's Run, additional parking to assuage the concerns of that community with the option of additional parking across 2nd Street, really reconfiguring that entrance or that intersection along 2nd Street for safety, and of course the rock wall, but then letting it dissipate out into pollinator gardens. Those who are familiar know that pollinators are struggling right now for habitat, so we've already got a landfill out there. This is a unique way of repurposing what was a challenge in a very positive way, and then having passive recreation as opposed to active recreation in that zone. But then it ties into Town Branch, and those of us who ran the Turkey Run and Bait ran right along Town Branch back in the day. But that phase 1 includes a new playground, state-of-the-art, and we've got equipment that we're excited about to help support youth in this particular part of town. We believe that that helps in that distribution of assets in underserved areas. So we get into the aquatics evolution thing. I mentioned it earlier that we started out with the master plan recommending that mega aquatic facility, but the thought was, what if we consider strategic partnerships? So the first one that we discussed was an expansion of the wellness center that would include an aquatic component to it. But through the aquatic survey that was distributed, it was determined that we ought to be thinking about this broadly. right? So location's going to be important, access is going to be important. So additional locations were studied, including Millennium Park. What would happen if it were located there? Or the third option was, what if we capitalize on a community center idea and have a community pool that's tied in with Jenny Rogers? The unique thing is, there is no single answer, meaning we can think about this as a collage of aquatic facilities, spray grounds, pools. Maybe there's more than one. We don't know. We've got an asset at Bunny Davis. What are we doing with that? We don't know. What we do know is that there's a desperate need for it. So we've got to be very creative and forward thinking about what that means to us as a community. Yes.
We say forward thinking, so I know that pool is hot top either way, but having my son through the camp this year, that goes right there with childcare. So is there going to be an option for like a central pool at some point? Is that where you're thinking, or is it all going to be spread out? And how will that relate to Parks and Rec that runs the summer program? Is that kind of entered into this process of what you're thinking? Making sure that there's a place for camps or whatever, because a lot of people use that over the summer. So.
I don't mind jumping in here a little bit. Previous discussions is if we did build a pool at the community center in Jenny Rogers, then camps would certainly continue, and probably in a better way because you have a gymnasium.
Right.
And so you have a lot of opportunities for rainy days as well. This also gives me an opportunity to, there's a state bullet point that you made, to revisit Bunny Davis and see if it's salvageable. At one point, no, it isn't. But I've been here a little bit different from our city engineer. Connor may be able to comment on it since he's not here. But I still think that's a possibility. In either case, and this will be a decision amongst all of us naturally, a pool and many splash pads is probably the least expensive thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I came into this thinking we needed a big aquatic center as well, but you're only going to be able to service so many of that. But if you spread it out, spread that money out, it'll be better. I just want to make sure that when we're talking about childcare and needs, that we don't forget that aspect of it as well.
Walkability, each one of them really came into play too. When you start talking about aquatic centers kind of in neighborhoods, it made a lot of sense to consider that.
Yeah, I'll jump in here as well on the pool aspect, because this is one area where I do think centers' investment in their aquatic facility is going to be a huge asset for the community, where center building a 10-lane, 50-meter pool with a movable bulkhead changes the dynamics for our swim opportunities in this community greatly. And with the big part of that circle as well, because a big part of that circle will now come to Center College to swim and compete and do things. A lot of swim athletes will come from within that, definitely that 30-mile circle, will come to Center to
But on a day-to-day basis, Jamie,
and do things.
where's the usage of the public? Because that's what we're most concerned with today.
Well, that's the part that I'm getting to that. So that's the part that I would like to see us really work to continue to maintain the Bunny Davis pool and do the splash pads, because one of the things that I always get concerned about when you put a pool on a survey is there's very few people that won't say they want a pool. The question on the survey should be, how much are you willing to pay to access the pool? And if you put that question on there, then a lot of people are like, well, maybe I don't want a pool as bad.
And remember, to use for 2 months.
Yeah, and in our environment, that's exactly right. We have outdoor pool use is a 2-month season, and that's if the weather's good during that 2 months.
Well, just to build on what all of you were saying, John titled this section of the presentation Aquatics Evolution. Because it's still an evolving conversation, but we did learn a lot looking at other communities and looking at national trends, talking to several national aquatics experts, and looking at the Wellness Center potential partnership about cost, about operational cost as well as capital cost. And this notion of more of a decentralized approach really seems to be getting some traction. This combination of community pools and spray grounds seems to be more right-sized and flexible and adaptable for a community the size of Danville. So that seems to be the direction we're moving in, and I think it's a wise move. But we'll continue to fill in the next little chapters of the evolution, and hopefully we can all come to some consensus at some point about, okay, let's do this.
I've got 2 10-year-olds that love anything to do with water sports. I've got a pool at my house, but they love to go places. So when I can take them to the splash pad at the front of the water treatment plant, they love that. But then I'm not over that side that often, so, and I don't have the others that certain time. So I think the kids would love the splash pads, or whatever you all call them, but they call them splash pads. But I think sending them out in the community is a great thing.
I want to bring take us to the depth back into the aquatic discussion. Surprise, our approval is held work and goes through the summer. The negative side is that nobody's going to resurrection water around. It is on water, so we need to keep them as part of this discussion as well.
Well, and I think kind of maybe to Jamie's point, if you look at Streamland, I think they've kind of struggled to have their neighborhood school this year. So, back to kind of your point, like, yeah, I want a pool, but how much do I want to pay to use it?
And I think the other thing is that I'm concerned about the age of all of the things that hold water that we're talking about. And the new is on the horizon, but all the rest of them are the old.
Well, I was just going to add, a lot of the discussion had to do with equitable access to the pool system and not, something that was so central but removed from the community. And whether that served a broader community or a limited community, there were a lot of conversations around that. So I think, and I don't know that we ever fully resolved it, but it seemed like the decentralized approach was going to satisfy most programmatic requirements.
Makes sense as long as we don't create another issue by not realizing the importance of what goes on in this assumption.
All right. So where we are focusing at the moment is to understand what an aquatics facility might look like at Jenny Rogers. The counterpoint to that, though, is the discussion about Bunny Davis. So while this says it's a preferred aquatics master plan, it's for this specific site, I think the overall strategy is one that we continue to pull on Mead a little bit, right? Not Mead. And so it's going to continue to evolve, right? And the one thing that we heard loud and clear is that we've got to make sure that whatever we do serves the greatest number of residents, specifically children, right? So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, would I really send my 10-year-old on a bicycle across the viaduct to get out here? Probably not. But I'm also not going to put my 10-year-old on a bicycle to go the other way, right? So it's a two-way street. So when we think about connectivity, when we think about safety, when we think about access, we've got to be more thoughtful about what that means and how we make that work, right? And so what we have before us, the challenge we have before us, is how do we go with a system that expands out into the community and does does it in a very fiscally responsible way, in a very strategic way, in a meaningful way for everyone involved.
Now, your comment about access, earlier we heard the term about 20 minutes ago of walkability, and when you look at it, I wish everybody had this in front of them, I'd say, and it's not in my district necessarily, but approaching Parksville is the epicenter of our county. And I don't think anybody's going to come from Portland 12 to 15 miles into James to go to an aquatic center. And yet your population centers are not quite equitable, but where we're in the outlying areas, anything from the more remote parts of Magistrate Cohen's district to Ms. Bogner's and some of the rest of us, it's impossible. It's just not going to work. When I was a kid, you could go 5 miles on your bicycle. I don't think that's possible.
Were you possibly indicating that you may keep Buddy Davis and then put another one at Jenny Rogers, or is it one or the other?
I think that is a good part of our discussion
Because if you're talking about
the railroad tracks and
Everything has a capacity.
Yeah.
And so the idea is that you've got, and I'm going to round a number based on participation rate, right? So you're going to have about 900 to 1,000 kids peak day that you need to service in Boyle County, right? That doesn't count tourism or people that slide over here from, say, Stanford, right? So you've got about 1,000 people. Right now, Buddy Davis in our pool has got a capacity, a fixed capacity based on the square footage of about, say, 200 people. So there's a capacity deficit.
Yeah.
Right. And so what the idea is that, well, if you have a pool over here that can service 250 kids and one over here that can service 400, it starts to get to your number, but it's an incremental investment that you can make over time to add to the capacity without this huge aquatic center concept that can service 1,500 people. You don't really, see what I mean? Like you're trying to create incremental improvements, adding capacity to the system, trying to balance expenditure with, you know what I mean? And so, Junction City may need a splash pad, right? I would argue that a splash pad
not mine.
Well, but you see what I mean? Like so you're trying to create incremental improvements that is walkable where your population areas are.
Well, back to his question about when he let his kid go one way or the other, well, that kind of eliminates the choice. You've got, okay, if you live over here, you go to this there, and then the conditions like that. But, we're talking multi-million-dollar before for a big, huge aquatic center. Well, I think it's probably, maybe not the base dollar, but you can probably accomplish the second pool and splash pads are still under what the aquatic center would call.
Yeah,
and then up.
That's why it's just not.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's correct. But it's just not as accessible. I mean, if you put something in Millennium Park, but the nature, you've got the bypass, you've got the railroad, you're almost making a drivable facility. Well, that is not easy to get to if you're 14.
No, of course, no, I was referring to Buddy Davis and then Jenny Rogers.
Yeah, right.
The idea of 2 community pools and a series of splash pads, well distributed, would be a really nice way to balance and provide access to everybody in the community.
But again, I go back to, and I'm all for that, if we were in a different climate. And because again, our pool season is from our outdoor pool season is from Memorial Day to realistically to the 4th of July. But then it starts to wane. You can probably give yourself up to August 1st.
Labor Day.
Splash pads.
Well, I mean, but I'm just talking about the actual use of the pools. I mean, yes, they're open, but if you monitor the usage of the pool, after the 4th of July, when people in athletics are really cranking up and things, it really wanes.
What are your thoughts, Henry? How often do you see the pool used?
At Buddy Davis?
Yep.
After 4th of July.
After 4th of July, the numbers go down drastically. After 4th of July. And I would say that a good percentage of what comes to our pool is our day camp kids. I mean, we averaged 60 kids a week this summer for day camp. So, you know, when you think about that, that's the majority of what is using that pool. And then once and like you said, once 4th of July is over, people start to get back to school mode, their school shopping, and then you've got the blackout dates where people go on vacations with their families because of the sports. You know, you got that 2-week period where you can go on vacations. And so a lot of families around here do that.
So I just want to make that point, that again, our outdoor pool season is very short in our community.
The pool, the aquatic center has been underserved in this community for a while. I mean, we tried it first year, I moved here in 14, and didn't work, so 15 I bought a pool, made it a lot easier. But yes, I mean, my kids stopped using the pool closer to August 1st or whatever, but.
I guess my point is, I like the splash pads, I like to see us do what we need to do to make Bunny Davis functional. And if we're going to do a pool, it should be an indoor pool facility.
No.
So that's what we need if you're going to have an aquatic facility that's more functional.
We had you until there. What did you say, Jason? He had me up until the indoor pool idea. Sorry.
That's where I'm saying we got that though, so we don't necessarily need that either.
Jamie,
we have 3 indoor pools in this community.
Yeah, Jamie put a perspective on this I had not thought about, all the other sports that now all of a sudden have become fall sports in these generations. They were spring and fall sports years ago, but for Jamie's credit on this, he's opened my eyes to the fact that it's not the weather so much, it's all the other athletics that you have to take into consideration to make a mega or minor investment in pools. You really have to look hard at it.
We kind of also go back to Earl's point that where you also hope to bring in some outside people coming in for tournaments or whatever. You know, they may get here for a weekend and want to go to the pool too, but we don't really have that to offer. We're going to see low numbers.
Millennium, KSD, and the center.
Yes, it's a 2.
Yeah, 3 indoor pools.
Where's one?
Millennium, I mean, McDowell Center. McDowell Center. KSD and the center.
And the lake, Millennium Park.
But keep in mind, guys, we got 3 indoor pools in this community, but the city can't have enough trouble using video. Keep in mind, we talk about all the needs.
Right.
And if you build it, they'll drive it.
We've all those pools been here for a while.
Yeah, that's right.
Zero.
It's good conversation. Yeah. You all got some other presentations, correct? Yeah. And they didn't bring me much, so I'll be back.
Got to ask why.
I might say real quickly, as Jamie brought up earlier, is a good point, and it's information we don't have, and that's what's public access to the center pool. If we know that, then that kind of takes care of our indoor component.
My understanding is some of the preliminary conversations have been if the community needs it for tournaments, that's probably the place to start, right?
Yeah, and all of those, the 2018 master plan said that you have a lot of community partners. And so just like in Jimmy Rogers' case with Bull County Schools, we found a community partner, we have a written agreement, we've added Bull County Schools to our group, really, in essence, because they're providing a service through one of the facilities. So we need to continue that dialogue. We need to talk to the hospital about McDowell Center. We need to see how those things can be better exploited for community access. Same thing for Center College. We do need to talk to Center and continue to talk to Center. Yeah, we've talked to them in the past, but that's one of the things we have to continue to do. You know, Tommy, one good thing about, one of the things that, and I'm putting a pretty heavy lift on him, is the new Parks and Rec director has experience doing it. He has experience navigating some of those community-wide agreements to try to improve access or do these where you've got multiple entities come together to provide a single solution. for the good of the whole, right? And so we want to engage him in that activity when he comes on board.
Someone's gonna have 1.5 pools indoor. They're gonna have half pool, they're gonna have whole pool.
You talking about the natatorium that's there now?
It's 10 lanes, 50 meters.
That's the new one.
Yeah. The old one, I think, is going away. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but it's going
That's prime real estate.
Yeah, I think they're getting
But I raised that question just simply because it's a brand new facility. It's $25 million above budgeted. So think about us getting our kids into that facility on a regular basis. You know, just our school teams have had a struggle in using the current facility as center for school teams and whatever. So we got to think about what we do in this community that parts of it.
swim team facility needs to be indoor facility.
Oh, I agree.
So I think we're talking about, we're mixing two different things.
Yeah, but I'm concerned about outdoor swimming on the east and west side of Danville, which is splash pads. And then I don't know what I'm concerned about, but I am concerned about the facility that will be used during school time. After school.
Other place that I've said for years is the option to dome certain outdoor pools. It's been done, like said, they have a license on a lot. And so if we wanted to explore that possibly in partnership with somebody, some kind of doming something instead of actually building a facility, or else you'll end up with a KSD pool that will have nothing but issues.
But again, the diminished role of swimming versus all the other sports after you got.
Swim teams year round, just like travel
A
ball.
lot of money for swimmers.
All right, let me guys, I'm sorry. The conversation, though.
All right, the last area that I want to discuss is Millennium Park. So the master plan for the park was prepared in February, March of last year, and phase 1 came online, and that's the tennis courts, and was completed in April of this past year. So as we went through, there we go. As we went through the alternatives, there were some items that were identified in the 2018 master plan that we felt like we could accommodate with this piece of property. But we wanted to also take a step back and think about the civic assets that are proximate to Millennium Park. That includes Millennium Park itself, the Boyle County Schools, the Performing Arts Center, the Methodist Church. Bunny Davis is across bypass, as is McDowell Wellness Center. And so this began the conversation about safety and access, pedestrian safety, getting to this park or this area, bicycle safety, vehicular safety, and we wanted to provide assets that were identified in 2018. One of them being supporting public service needs with the possibility of a municipal outlet, so that could be a fire station, EMS, something like that, should it be needed in this part of town. The master plan will accommodate the tennis courts, which are already constructed, a high school-sized baseball field, a multi-purpose synthetic field, which is not present currently in the community. The idea of renovating the existing structure on site to house the Parks and Recreation Office, keep in mind that at this time the assumption was made that Bunny Davis may go away, so Parks and Rec had to go somewhere. This is an opportunity for us to accommodate them in the heart of Millennium Park. Support parking, obviously, a playground, rentable space, so thinking about spaces that could support events, family reunions, cookouts, church festivals, etc. Pedestrian connectivity into Millennium Park, into our surrounding district. Pavilion and civic lawn for community events. I know that the Brass Band Festival is always a big hit, so possibly accommodating some of that program out here at Millennium Park. And then, like I said, the municipal outlot. I'm going to take a moment and let everyone digest this. I'm not sure that everyone has seen it, but I want to make sure that we don't rush by this because I think there's some really key things in this program that may strike a chord. One thing that we did do, as I said, in our aquatic evolution, is think about what an aquatic facility would be. This location seems to make the most sense, but if that happens, obviously it would be we would compromise that multi-purpose field, possibly that outlot. That is a very challenging undertaking because everything infrastructure, meaning parking, utilities, et cetera, would have to be run to this site. It drove the numbers up quite a bit. So at this point, that was taken and put on the back burner for now, and the exploration of the other opportunities were put at the forefront of our current thinking.
Where's the county's property in relation to that now?
Right through the center of it. I'm just kidding. Do you want me to try to go up there and just like, let me do this?
Is it to the left of that multi-purpose and day field?
It's to the right of the veterans.
Your all's track is essentially up through the middle and then comes over here a little bit. There's a little bit of an L shape to it from what I remember. But you're in essence right through kind of this area, right into there, something like that. It's a more narrow track.
Okay, so that plan would only work if the city acquired White's Park?
No, I mean, you are a park, you as a share. You are a park. And so.
If we gave up the land for that?
Well, I mean, you already used the land for this purpose.
Right, okay.
Right, I mean, is this, so really, the difference between what's there now and what they've drawn in the master plan is making a decision, really what this building looks like. So what we learned in one of the trips we made to Western Kentucky, the group that went out there, was that community building that you could rent for weddings, just a normal priced structure. So really that building could provide that space. And it's an opportunity, if you wanted to go the route, to put Park offices in Millennium Park without adding another structure. It's an easy building to renovate for that. So, it's on the property now. So what do you do with it? And do you add more property or just create more green space around what's there now?
You gentlemen doing the planning, so I want you to understand that other private ventures can often hurt private ventures. In your district and two in my district, magnificent wedding venues already.
All right, go ahead,
I'd be concerned because I've been at weddings in Junction City at a magnificent company venue, and we have at least two in my district. So I don't want to necessarily think that we're going to have a low cost and no cost wedding venue in the middle of our park in competition with ours.
It's also just a space for rent.
Yeah, it's just space around it, need to characterize it. It's just a wedding venue. Go ahead.
Struggling to find places to have a birthday party.
Yeah.
Those kind of things.
And then, again, that's good because the accessibility is there.
It's just a multi-use place. I wouldn't stray away from relocating park offices to that spot. Just because Bunny Davis is back in play doesn't mean it has to be, it can't be utilized or taken down and put up in its place.
Sure.
I
We love traffic over there. Jason, I agree.
Change my mind.
I do like the multi-purpose field, because I think that's much needed in our community, is to have that multi-purpose synthetic field, that would be a nice,
Year-round, it provides year-round activity.
that versus a 6-week pool is much more year-round than I would.
Listen, I don't
understand
say
on that.
that's Jamie, okay?
Yeah.
The complications of all this to me is, all these things are important to different aspects of our community, but they're all important to somebody in our community. We have to figure out how we can prioritize, taking care of his district, and taking care of your district, taking care of his district. And I keep telling everybody that, as you guys sit around and talk about your districts, you know, I got city folks who live about everybody's district around the table, so. Don't think about outside the city, your districts are in the city. Some of you have more city residents in the district than I have in the city.
Jamie makes that well.
Jamie's got the easiest job of any of us.
I just call Earl when I'm
Oh, that's good.
I think most of us will agree that the most important thing in that whole picture there is that Veterans Memorial.
Yeah.
And I don't want that just to be like an outliner, so any sort of design or whatever you do, that should be a huge focal point. I mean, I know it's kind of by the road and everything like that, but I don't want to just kind of get pushed back by a bunch of parking lots or whatever. That's an important piece of this community.
I've seen a couple of examples of that expanded. And not necessarily isolated from the park, but more integrated into the park so that it complements each other. And so that's something that's got to be challenged to these folks to continue to have a dialogue in an acceptable way for the folks that contribute money to maintain that, right?
I will say that of anything that the city and the county do, I don't think we've ever had an argument over that piece of property and contributing to it. I think that's probably one of those things that is flawless for us. And
Bottom line, that is sacrosanct.
Well, one of the things I would point out that's been talked about before is the possibility of having a pavilion of some type closer to the Veterans Memorial, that events for everybody could be held, but specifically this community hosts a lot of veterans events, and they could have some shelter there as well.
Well, for you young guys, everything on that slide is walkable. That's the beauty of the fact that it's all located in that one area. We could all get out there and walk from the purple, I guess that could be dark, but purple, all the way down to the dark green, we could walk. That would be the beauty of making a lot of those things there. Parents could have kids out there and more than one thing at the same time. That was the concept about Lady Park, we don't want to get away from it.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, as we started to look at Millennium Park and the adjacent schools and everything, you can almost think about it as a civic district or a civic campus. And it really does need a network of pathways that connect all the assets safely. That's something we'll try to improve as we do each phase.
Yeah, so that's another neat thing about this. The tennis courts are done, so theoretically, one of the city or county or both could, you all could decide, let's spend money on the building this year, let's renovate that thing, get that knocked out. That wouldn't impact this at all. It's easy to piecemeal. You could build a synthetic field if you work on the road a little bit, if you just wanted to do that this year. It really makes it a shopping cart. You could really pick and choose the level of investment. You could just build a baseball field. You could get it graded and put your fence up and then develop the back, your dugouts in a better way next year. It really creates an affordable way to implement it as well.
Is the baseball field synthetic?
I think you would do it synthetic based on the demand. Yeah, based on the demand that, when I've traveled around a little bit, just looking at the different, I know the play guys, I'm a little bit of a dork, but everywhere I go, I look at that kind of thing. And that's a little bit, that's pretty much what you're going to have to do to make it affordable in the future. And outside, and then because you want it you don't want to build it and not be able to use it in the wintertime.
Right.
Well, you can do that in the wintertime, or you can do that 12 months a year. But then it's not, you don't have to mow it, you don't have to stripe it, so that if Amber needs, and Stephanie are wanting to program it, Connor doesn't have to do anything extra, right? It's ready to go.
For somebody that's spent a lot of time on baseball fields in baseball season, it's winter time still. Because lately, February and March, when we're playing baseball, that's still winter time.
That's winter time, for sure. But it gives you something to think about, you know?
Earl, contributing to stuff like this is easier when we also have projects in Junction and Parable happening too. Because I know, Mayor, that, you know, we're all in this together, but at the end of the day, where we are a different form of government, we still have to go back to our districts and have to answer the people that put us there. And so we want to make sure that they understand that their needs are being met and not just the core city. And we understand Danville is the core and it brings everything here, but we still have people that, you know, so doing this is great, you know, and this is kind of stuff that I love to see. We need to make sure that, you know, we got a splash pad, you know, in Junction, and, you know, a park and.
And I think in response to that, you guys are still open for additional jobs, hires, right? You all would love for us to identify other places in Boyle County and Danville that you would develop a plan like this for, right?
Absolutely.
You should have just said, it's great, it's a start. But if you're going to do Purple or the Junction or whatever, somebody needs to get somebody like this on board to develop a plan so we can have some choices. See, this is what we didn't pay for, we got a plan developed.
Yeah, and this agreement goes back to saying that it wasn't going to be just concentrated in the city of Danville.
This isn't.
That's, I know,
Yeah.
I'm trying to tell you, it's easier for us to sell stuff and spend money in the core of the city of Danville as long as our constituents are also being taken care of per the agreement that we signed.
I think
Wait. Jason, I agree with you again.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
So I do think that where they started was just thinking about all of our natural resources countywide, which, you know, out there in Tom's district and other areas, we've got some of the best hiking land.
Correct.
And natural resources.
Bike trail, that all of us to do.
The bike trail, we got, you know, Lake Harrington, which we have a place down there and stay down there a lot. And that's such a recreational asset to this community, is Lake Harrington. I'm telling you, on Labor Day, it was the busiest I've ever seen it. They were literally 4 and 5 boats wide all day long going down the lake. And there were thousands of people out on the lake. I know, I needed sunscreen. That was not sunscreen.
On Jamie's point, I mean, and also Jason's, beautiful flat ground in Junction City. What would be the approximate cost to build a baseball field versus the splash pad being much easier and less cost, and a swimming pool astronomically more? What is the cost for just a relatively decent baseball field on good flat ground in Junction?
I can get bases for $30 on Amazon.
Well, I don't know, from a ownership standpoint, I think the property in Junction City is owned by the school.
Yes. It's owned by the school.
So we've got to continue to work through the school.
I know.
And it's leased by Junction City for 99 years. So
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And that's good news.
Right.
that's good news because they're all on board and it's getting at you. So there is a good baseball field kind of spot that we made into a baseball.
And then all of a sudden you're reaching all the way out to the Farlings, Portland, and Maryville, they're almost centralized.
All right.
So a couple of things I'd like to contribute. So my dad's a veteran, so that part is going to be at top of mind.
Good.
You've got, when you think about the Perryville battlefield, so that is, for better or for worse, it's an asset, right? We've walked the battlefield as a family a lot. And it's something that a lot of people are drawn to, either through reenactments or just if, you know, they're going to different battlefields in the region. Junction City is part of the network. When we talk about a connected park system, it's not just parks within a small area, it's the opportunity to go out and touch them, right? Through a trail network, you've got a wildlife refuge. Every Thanksgiving, my dad, my mom, my brother, and I would go to the wildlife refuge. I mean, it's a hidden gem. Portland is a hidden gem. And that's part of this, and that was part of that regional context that we were talking about. Arrington Lake, the wildlife refuge, Junction City. I mean, we're thinking about this holistically, but we also have to be very strategic in how we start to build momentum, to get traction, so that we can do the things that we need to do to realize this vision, to support all of the community, right? I mean, that's why I get excited about this stuff, right? So I think the message here is we've got this great foundation. We have this unbelievable group of assets that we have in front of us. So how can we collectively leverage what we bring to the table to amplify this, right? Together we're going to be much stronger than separate, right? It's just a fact. And it's not just the two entities that are here. It's those strategic partnerships that are out there in the community that, given the opportunity, may surprise you in what they can bring to the table. And that's what I get really excited about, because I know the fabric of this community. I know what we're about. And that, to me, is probably the strongest statement that we can make. So, I mean, I get giddy, right? Everything that you're saying makes sense to me. It does. And so how do we make it happen? You know, how do we lock arms and march forward? We're not always going to see eye to eye. There's no way, right? But boy, if we can get that common vision and we can get there, even if it's a little bit differently, but that same location or destination, man, what could this really become? And what are the long impacts, right, that we can have? I mean, we want to be that center, right? The city of first. Let's live up to that, right? The community of first. Absolutely. Okay.
I think we're historically old now.
Historically?
We're historically old now.
So just a couple of comments about cost, because I know that's always uppermost on people's minds. So pre-COVID, any one of us, any discipline, architect, landscape architect, engineer, would have answered your question with knowledge of some historical data that this is how much a baseball field would cost, or this is how much that would cost. Post-COVID, it's completely different. And so,
Well, relatively speaking, a pool has gone up exponentially because of concrete costs. They're up 5 times. So a baseball field is going to, in Junction City, is not going to go up exponentially to that level.
one of the team members that we don't have here today is Turner Construction. And so what we do now in our industry is we don't do our own cost estimating anymore, because we don't have our finger on the pulse of supply chain issues, labor cost issues, because it changes monthly. And so Turner is our partner in cost estimating. And so when we start to identify costing needs, we go through a process with Turner to give you some real numbers for big things and little things. And so it just so happens that the person representing Turner on our team grew up in Bergen. Let me make sure to say that right. There you go. So that's kind of another local story there. But we really try to make informed decisions and give you good numbers that are real, because it's just a really awkward thing when you use historical numbers to say something and then you plan for that and it comes in 3 times higher because the market's completely different. So we just try to avoid those sorts of things. It means you have to go through a couple of extra steps, but it's worth it.
What else, John?
So the tennis courts, like I said, are online. So 6 new tennis courts, championship court lighting, stadium seating, parking, plants, and obviously stormwater management. And the ability to add shade structures, which are down at the bottom of the slide. So, opportunities, and this is what comes to top of mind for me, and at the bottom you can say, are there other opportunities or priorities that we need to consider? But Millennium Park is an opportunity for us to think about. Indoor recreation, a feasibility study, if that's really a high need, what does that mean to us? And is that Millennium Park? Is it an expansion of the wellness center with that partner? Are there other locations? I mean, we need to really vet that. Community aquatics, getting to the bottom, or to a bottom line for Bunny Davis, the impacts of Jenny Rogers, splash pads, that kind of thing. The South Neighborhood Park Master Plan, that park was identified in 2018. Right now, there's nothing there, but eventually, the hope is that we would expand into that. And we've got Junction City. What does that mean? How do we operate there? What impact can we have in that community? And that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? So with that, my questions are, where should we go and how do we get there together? Easy one to answer.
I've been on Earl about this one for a while, and I think he and I are on the same page. I don't see much about skateboard parks or BMX parks anywhere in our parks. We've got one that's probably utilized more than the basketball courts over in And are you guys seeing those in other areas you're doing architecture for? I mean, my job takes me all across the country, and so constantly in parks and seeing new ones being developed out west all over. We've got one here that's okay, but it'd be nice to have a better one, and then less splash pads, things that we use year round. Generally, depending on how cold it is, whatever. But skateboard parks would be a huge addition to several places across the county. And then, what other things are we missing that you're seeing in other communities that you're working with? And I mean that's what you guys are working with. Okay.
One of the areas, I mean, you do great programming here, but it's really focused primarily on kind of recreational programming. And there's a lot of creativity going on nationally with programming that I think you could benefit from studying more and sharing some ideas more. And even for aquatics, huge growth in health and wellness programming for all ages that I think you could grow into a lot. There's a lot more social programming. So again, trying to hit all the different demographics with specific targeted programming that is aligned with their interests and needs. Because not everybody's into sports, right? And so, what are the other dimensions of the whole person and the whole community that we could nurture? So I think, again, you're getting a new director. And that's like an exciting new chapter.
Yeah.
And so to think creatively about how programming can enrich and capitalize on the assets that you have is just as exciting as capital.
I like that idea, but programming means organized, and to get to sign up for something and you can wait for it. I'm just talking about everyday recreation. I mean, it's important to get kids outside and just going out and doing stuff. And it's nice that younger kids have parks they can go play on the playground or whatever. But we need this to be, from 2 to 50.
Bike park.
Yeah, bike park. There's just various things where you don't have to sign up for a program and wait for it to happen. It's just like, hey, I'm going to go to the park and do this. And so I would say maybe, you can take shifts or whatever, but if you're out at the, go out into the skateboard park at some point and say, hey, where are you coming from? And use this. And you kind of get an idea of where everyone's coming from and maybe pose a few questions. But I mean, programming is nice, but we also want to make sure that the taxpayers are seeing a benefit all the time, not just, travel ball or this or that.
I think we talked a little bit also about connectivity, so connecting some of the natural features, existing streams, existing trails to again, create a thread through all these kind of more intensive program features. I think is something we're working on in other communities as well. So how do you
Yeah, and
It's not about where you're going, it's about how you get
Goes
there.
back to the walkability and equitability and.
it's nice to do when they start going up the lazy trail or whatever, people are like, oh, it's crazy, but it's huge, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
On the master plan, was there any talk about putting like a playground where that baseball field, softball field, tennis courts, is there any, design for a playground with swings, slide?
Yeah, so we,
Okay, so in this zone, so these are the park offices that we talked about, kind of that indoor-outdoor terrace. The idea of this is shaped like home plate, would be home plate terrace, which would give you views into the outfield of the baseball field and then the tennis complex. But this light green zone could be a playground, right?
central play.
Central play area. It could also be located in this zone. We thought about that almost being potentially like a nature play type of venue where you've got rocks, we've got a little bit of that out there, but benched into the hillside, slides, etc.
On that point, your first choice, I would say negative. The closer that you are, just like the Little League World Series a couple weeks ago, parents can keep watching on 5-year-olds and be close. So the closer you can be with the park that the judge is talking about, I think the better you're going to be, because in today's world, I don't think parents are going to want to be 500 people with their little kids when they're playing, or you're going to have supervision there all the time.
Right.
It's fact of life.
And it was a balancing act. The opposite could be that this could be a zone where parents, if they drop their kids off for practice, etc., could have a place to hang out and have that proximity to playground. So this is by, I'm sorry?
Have concessions.
Have concessions in that building, etc., that would support all of these venues. So point taken, right? And I don't disagree, but I think that we'll flush that out as this continues to evolve. One of the things that you asked was about programming and what the 2018 master plan gave to us. I'm sorry if that wasn't you. But, the old adage with the master plan is it's outdated as soon as it's plotted and put on a table, right? So we've got to continue to have flexibility in our thought process. In 2018, we were talking about the mega aquatic facilities. That's evolved, right? But it's still built upon the foundation of 2018. So we've got to make sure that we're thinking about recent trends in Parks and Rec, making sure that we're responding to those things. What has been interesting, at least in Cincinnati, is, the scooter, right? Where do you put them when you go to the park? Do you drop them at the front? I mean, now they're starting to think about what do you do with those things. Now, I don't think it's as big of an issue in Danville, but it's still a theme, right, that folks are managing from an operations standpoint. Those things are going to continue to evolve. So as we design, we have to design in flexibility, recognizing that things are going to change, right? They are. It's going to be services that, who knew pickleball 10 years ago was going to be where it is now? Well, now we're designing pickleball courts everywhere, right? Because it has caught, the fever has gotten us, right? So that was something that if you went back to 2018, my guess is pickleball championship facilities was not in there, but now we're thinking about it. So we've always got to have our mind thinking, our eyes forward, right? Always trying to anticipate, but also with the flexibility to respond as things change. Because we also didn't expect COVID, right? And that changed how a lot of people think about what we're doing.
We were, someone last 2 weeks, I was somewhere, and they had a big, huge, turf slide. And going through that, kind of like snowshoeing, but it was, you were waiting in line for
Topography and playgrounds with synthetic turf is big.
Yeah, and that's kind of stuff that I was asking, like, what other areas you see? And when you kind of had that area there, well, it's kind of natural that I had, and then kind of cool to incorporate something.
And whatever we build on that hill needs to incorporate the park because it's going to have to be terraced.
Yes, it is.
I know you're taking good notes, you're getting some of these good suggestions in. The other thing I'd like to add to the discussion is that Did he hear the names of other locations of the parks tossed out? So as you get those on your list, bring those to the city manager, bring this to the kind of judges act, and he'll put you in contact with you and get you out to see some of these areas if you haven't seen some of them. And see what kind of plans come up with and be developed. If it's going to be city and county, it needs to have city and county input, and it needs to have city and county all that other good stuff too. But I say right now, we heard some real good things about other areas that we didn't ask you all to address when we started back in
And along those lines of communications, please, all of you, go to our website, go to the city website, and include us in all your communications. You get our emails right there.
That's a new request too. I agree with Jason on that, because that's 3 times, Jason.
Man, I'm gonna have to leave on that. You're making me nervous.
Is there, I think the synthetic field there is, I think they use that right now for like archery, right? So, 'cause I guess that's a place that could easily be utilized for whatever, right?
Maybe if you could ask that again, I want to make sure I'm understanding what
So
you're asking.
right now, where that multi-synthetic
Synthetic turf, yes.
turf field is, they utilize that for, I guess, one of the school's archery programs right now. I believe that's where they put it. And so I hate to take away something and add something else fixed for it. So I don't know. I was hoping Pearl would still be here to ask that question, but I guess really you could put up an archery.
Yeah, they can do it there, just not at the same time.
You're working on accuracy.
Get to help those?
All those things to me in this plan of plans go back to our outstanding Parks and Rec staff. They need to be aware of all these things so we can program those things or program around those things. Anything happening out there, these folks need to know that. And while I'm on that soapbox, is that they program this entire community, and they do it very well. People complain about not having this and not having that. They don't go to the rec department to get that proper discussion started. I try to send them there, but
do you really want that discussion?
yeah, they do it outside. They need to just know what folks are concerned about. And also, I try to remind folks in the city, Jason, that just because 3 or 4 people say that's something they're interested in, doesn't mean that the city and Parks and Rec don't provide it. You look at numbers, look at groups of people who want things. So I have to remind them, because I like taking up for these guys, because, they're always up there. And you talk about skateboarding, basketball, all over the place. Just depends on when you go to the park.
Yeah.
You have somebody up there 24/7, they see all the stuff going on.
Orthopedic surgeons love the skate parks.
Not much they look at all.
Football get 500 feet.
You get more interested in knees.
I appreciate you recognizing them, Mayor, because I was thinking the same thing. We do have an advisory committee too.
Yes, that's right.
And they should be informed. And really, this group here is looking at the vision and holding the purse strings. We should be getting advice from those folks sitting back there.
Well, that's why my original comment, first off, when I said the fees were low, I see how much more program is happening out there. That's why I was surprised. I thought the programming funds would have been higher than what was put up there. So,
And those things are based on the economy of scale for this community to make it affordable for lots of people. Then that doesn't all the time show us all the kids who get scholarships in. There's a lot of that good stuff in this as well. And it's okay. We're big enough to absorb some of that.
I have a question, since this is a communication meeting. So, the fiscal court, did the former director come to you quarterly and give you a report?
he was at every meeting almost.
Absolutely.
Okay. So when we have the new director, this will keep the communication
No,
going
let
of everything? Okay.
We never heard from Evan.
That's true. His predecessor, yes.
Previous director, that was done.
Okay, so you haven't had reporting quarterly for 5 years.
We did.
And Tom and I are technically still on the Parks and Rec committee, but we haven't had a meeting in 2 years. We've asked for it. But,
Well, I guess the new director
Whoa.
will
do that.
I'm sorry, what?
You're on the committee, but.
Yes.
No,
assigned.
so like our jail committee
Right.
and like our public works committee, we would normally meet with the head of the director of Parks and Rec, and we would be informed of what was happening, what was going on, where the focus was, and after this agreement was written, and after that director exited, we haven't had but one meeting.
But y'all
We
asked,
tried.
y'all asked for it, right?
Oh, yes.
We've asked for it.
And y'all brought it to the attention of your judge, not this judge, but the previous judge.
Previous judge.
Yeah. See, again, the buck stops with us elected officials. If you're not getting something you want, and you come to one of the elected officials, we have to get it done with staff. That's just plain and simple as I know. And I'm quote unquote, Jason, I agree with you on this one too, I'm a good guy. Okay? So if you're not getting something as an elected official, we need to better communicate, because that's on us. And if you're not getting, let's say you're not getting quarterly reports, and annual reports, whatever it is you needed, from asking Parks and Rec and asking their director, then that means it comes back to us, and people got to try to get those, well, not try to get those things for you.
And we are getting those now.
And if you want to have the Parks and Rec director come to your meetings once a quarter, once a month, as long as it's feasible, because, you know, they have work to do as well, I think it's important to come. We request that they come to our meetings. Okay? So you have to sort of, you request that you get it started,
This is different.
get a standard started.
This was our assignment of the board to meet quarterly, and that was known, but it just evaporated.
And not only that,
Known by the previous person, not the current person.
not only that, it went from our joint employee to your employee. So we don't necessarily have the authority to tell them to come to a meeting without having it cleared by city manager or the mayor or whoever. So that's a little bit of common courtesy that we would just say, hey, come here. But you know, we want the communication because it's easier for us to tell our constituents what's happening and why we're spending hundreds.
Yeah, and I agree with all those things, like I say, as part of the, I guess I'm still an elected official. As elected officials, we're responsible for what starts with us. Our city manager will always communicate things that are appropriate. Our finance also will communicate things that are appropriate. And then the Parks and Rec director is supervised by city manager. So it's time they're not doing something that you think is appropriate, you go to the city manager. He or she will clarify that for you, get that taken care of.
Well, it's a new day. We're getting our reports.
That's right.
We're communicating.
Okay.
So we're going to move forward.
And I'd like to make this point, for the past 2.5 or longer years, I've had a great relationship and can go to Jenny home for anything that I need with the city. And we've got 4 new magistrates, so you may pick out somebody as your liaison back and forth. I know Jenny's probably worn out from all the calls and emails she gets from me.
Tom, let them hold it. Let's clarify two guys. Jason, let's clarify this. As the mayor did, any communications that you all have, that you want to raise questions about the city, my advice is to do the exact same thing the mayor does. I go straight to the city manager. I don't go to another commissioner. I go to the city manager. If I have a question or concern about the county, we're going to go straight to the county judge. And that keeps the proper chain of command in place. And you can be friends with Jenny and talk to Jenny all you want to, but if you want to answer about something about city government, you got to do like the mayor does. And then go straight to the city manager. Now, do I need to repeat that? I'm going to go straight to the judge, and not going to come to the magistrate. I'm going to go, and I, as the mayor, go straight to the city manager. And not everybody likes that. But in our form of government, that's how I've been trained. And if a citizen raises a concern to me, I say, appreciate it, young man. Mr. Cody, I wrote that down, it's in my brain, I'm going to take it to the city manager for you. I don't give you any answer, I don't give you any promises, I just take it to the city manager. Folks in there don't like that. But as elected commissioners, I want to ask you all to encourage you all to model that.
That's your form of government, isn't it?
Yes.
So that's a protocol.
Yeah. And I'm not, you know, Jen and I get along just fine, don't misunderstand me. But Donna's here, and Rick's here, Kevin's here, and the mayor's here. And they've heard me say this over and over again. I had 12 years on the commission, or I as a commissioner took things straight to the city manager. Wasn't always this tricycle rider all the time, but it was the city manager. I would encourage you all to do the same thing. And what does that do for us? That means when you get an answer from the city, it's coming from the one person that's in charge of the city. Wow, we don't do anything else from this week, I hope we all get that one, because that keeps me out of the hot seat all the time.
So when somebody comes to me, I just tell them to go to you?
Is that how it works? No, you can take,
We'll talk about that, Jay.
yeah, that's fine. All I'm saying is when you communicate with the city, I can't tell you how you all going to play everything, I'm saying you, I'm just saying, if you're going to communicate with the city, and you want to communicate it and get an election in an official capacity, because the city manager, then he or she may bring it to the commission before they give you their election, but if it starts with the city manager. Yeah.
Our managers represent districts.
That's right.
They have constituents within their district that correspond with them.
That's right.
And that's what they should do. You know, their constituents should correspond with them.
And our constituents of city law respond with us, but I don't answer. But it's like you said about the cost of things changed overnight, well, the essence changed overnight. Harold, I'm sorry, but I'm putting all the people, no, he's putting all the information to a few. And you know that's what I've been doing.
Well, that's what I do in my district, is I call the city manager.
Judge Bob was just my cell phone number.
Yeah.
Encourage everybody to get out there.
Keep my cell phone.
Yes, I
and say, this is Tom Evans. I got
What would
what
I
I say.
On the city streets and all that.
This is Tom. Before they answer that, what I want is this. The challenge is for us, two government bodies, to take this information and decide, not if, not when, but how much money we're going to spend this to get some of these things done. The prices aren't going to get it done. We got to really decide, break ground on some of this stuff there.
I kind of like the ratios you have up there.
They look at the man. Oh, it's you do. Those ratios aren't going to change unless the court decides they want to change. The city's going to continue to move forward on parts of America. Now that's the mayor speaking. Four other folks who got to hold of that conversation too, but we've already had some conversations.
I'm right behind you in my district.
Yeah, I know you. Well, yeah, this is a good meeting, guys. Let's be serious about it. These guys have done a whole lot of work for us, and they like to see things, I say, get built, get constructed, get them done, right?
I will put on the table that with our jail committee, and I'm chair, and the fact that we are woefully lacking 30 million, 40 million for a new facility, you guys have to take that into consideration about our limited resources and maximum number of pulls and tugs on what we can do, even with our bonding capacity. That is critical that we put on the table.
Yes.
And the city is advantaged by the inmate population that you send us as well.
Well, remember now, we don't get into what responsibilities are for the city and what responsibilities are for the county. I'm just saying to you all, is that if we're going to make Parks and Rec improve in this county, it's got to be a joint movement. It's got to be some joint effort.
The important word that you said there is this county.
Yes.
It can't be just Danville, okay?
Yeah. Keep in mind,
Well, we try to program that, Jet. Stephanie's got a quick question.
So that triggers me into that. So we do program in the county. So we, just so everybody's aware, we mostly do our K1 is plays basketball, and they do their practices throughout the week at Danville Elementary School. We have a great relationship with that principal there. And then we do games all day on Saturday. So Danville is full of just lots of kids on Saturdays. And then we also have, last year was our first season during basketball season to use Junction City Elementary School for our second and third grade boys. They practiced throughout the week. Now, we didn't do games there on the weekend, but they did tell us that that was something that we were able to do. They have a fantastic gymnasium there. I think it's brand new. It's beautiful. My question for you all, this is just I'm starting my second year here, or second, yeah, been 2 years now, is what can we do with Junction City Park? Because I would program some of our leagues at Junction City Park. That's an extra field for us to utilize. But I don't even know what that looks like. Like, I don't know who we need to talk to. How does that work as far as paying for it, things like that?
The park is Jim Douglas. The school system owns the field, the land, and they lease it for $1 to the city, and so the city runs the park, and everything on it is the city's. So Jim Douglas is the mayor, and I'd be thrilled to go with you if you're interested in talking to Jim.
Because we can do different programming in Junction. I just don't know what that looks like. Nobody's told me that.
Good example, good conversation. Now, what she's gonna do, she's gonna take that information to the city manager.
Yeah.
And the city manager might go see the mayor of Junction City together, because that's just how we operate. See, a live example right there.
So some of those situations, so then logistically, Junction City, they have the right to spend money on that park. Boyle County Fiscal Court does not. So you don't, unless you agree with Junction City, and you all have an agreement where you're spending money on their behalf, and they give you permission to spend money on that property, so they have to give you permission to do that. And so we've got to think about those, or the school does, or somebody.
We've had permission to use that field in the past.
Well, verbal permission is one thing, but what I'm saying is for the taxpayer, to protect my dollar, you gotta have a structural agreement in place to be able to do that long term. So like, all I'm saying is that we don't have, so when we went to talk to Mayor Douglas 8 years ago, wasn't really interested in spending any money. So Parks and Rec, for her to go to Junction City, it would be worthwhile if Junction City kicked in a little bit of money to help offset some of those costs for the other taxpayers that are around, And so I'd love to continue to talk about that and maybe you're the right master, since it's your district, to go with us to talk to Mayor Douglas and to encourage, maybe we have an agreement, maybe they're added to our agreement, Junction City is.
I love that.
Right?
And I think I talked with Josh Morgan about him going to see Jim Douglas, and I would be there with Jim Douglas. And then you all can come into us and we can talk as a group. But I think I'm getting from other people, we'd love to see more things going on at the park. We just got to get that park up to par.
Well, so today, we've never had legal access to a facility in Junction City to spend money on. And I say that, that's true. We don't have, the city of Danville doesn't have any access to anything down there. Boyle County Fiscal Court, really, it's not. So we've got to create that agreement in order to be able to spend that money. And I'd love to, we'll do that. I mean, like, we've done it, we've tried to outreach before, but the timing wasn't right. The timing wasn't right.
I think now, we've got a lot of people interested in the park becoming a better facility and serving a lot more kids than it does now.
Yeah, timing's much better than
Yes, timing's better.
And it used to be, my kids, my boys from Danville went to Junction City because there's always a game out there on the field, whether you believe it or not, there's always a game there. So we've done it, they have the evenings up there.
But it's not about the total.
Hey, Amber mentioned something about the baseball field being on high school. I have to pick up my kids.
That park in Junction is a high school baseball field. It's a high school sized baseball field.
Yeah.
So
They practice on it?
Do what?
They practice on it?
Not the high school team, no. The Little League, Babe Ruth League that we have, that is a separate entity that does the 14 to 17-year-olds, they play their games out there and have practices out there April through July. And that's their field that they use.
Jason?
So the park's issued.
It's not just
It is utilized.
that I'm asking about. I think Amber and Stephanie and the group do a good job of programming, but it's hard for us to ask somebody from Paula's district give their tax dollars, we turn around and spend it inside the Danville city limits. Same thing with Tom. So when you ask us to pony up some money for this, we want to help, but it has to be proportional.
I see, you keep taking me back to the one factor that I think you and I are probably never going to agree with. That's okay.
Jamie and I don't agree on it either.
That's all right. Everything that happens in the city of Danville happens in Boyle County. I don't go out to the park and look and see if you can play basketball, what county or what city it comes from.
If they have access.
Again, all the city kids don't have access.
If they have a park, that's my whole point. There's no parks out there. There's like one park that's waterlogged half the time. He doesn't have any parks out in his district.
So you're not blaming the city for that.
No, I'm not blaming the city, but the county at some point has to come up and say, hey, if we want to own some property out here and provide some opportunities for people in Tom's district, Paul's district, we can't go put it all in the city of Danville. That's my whole point.
I don't have a problem with you. I don't have a problem with you. All I want to say is this.
We can't be equal on this. That's what I'm saying. You can't expect us to, you guys are pony up $5 million and us pony up $5 million.
Oh,
that's unfair for us to be asked. So.
Do I pay county taxes?
You do.
Right.
And you know what? The county subsidizes a lot of stuff for the city, so let's not get into that argument. Please don't bring that.
Wait.
I'd like to talk about the $5.7 million we spend on EMS for the city of Danville.
And the jail.
And the jail. We're going to spend $30 million on the jail. No. You went there. You went there. So let's not go there.
That's so close.
You start throwing that whole city of Danville, people pay taxes too.
We had a great, wonderful Mitchellsburg Park, and I spent every time I went to see my cousin, that's what we did, we played in Mitchellsburg Park, played baseball, swim at the swimming pool, Sunnyside, you know, the park would take us, so I do appreciate having parks outside of just, you know, I am for everything inside the city of Danville that we've got going. I'm so proud of everything we have, but I do see the need for some outside, some connectivity that we have to have, because these kids are just not getting the same, they just cannot. Even Junction City's not that far from Millennium Park, some of those kids will not ever be over there. It's just a fact of life.
You come to one of our EMS committee meetings and hear about the suicides out in the county because kids don't have stuff to do. There's just things. That's why I'm passionate about this. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm not trying to argue with you. But it's important that we provide services for everybody in the county.
And let me do this to you, Jason. I agree with you again, but I'll still go back to the point that everything that Parks and Rec does, it does it for the entire county. We've not limited ourselves to this.
Of course, for those people that have the ability to come into the city limits of Danville.
Well, and also for those folks who don't have the ability to come to the city of Danville. You know, like these ladies talk about, I'm not going to debate this. Parks and Rec has done a good job in Danville County. It will continue to do a great job in Danville County. We just ask that it becomes an important joint venture between the city and county government. That's all this meeting is about today, is get it on the same page at the same time.
And I think that we signed you guys over the authority to do that. So I think that previously we agreed on that, and that's what we want to get to. But there have to be boundaries on what we can give for the various reasons that we have a lot of things we have to pay for as well. And then we also have to make sure that we start focusing on areas in the county that may need some parks or may need, you know, some things too. So if the city of Danville, and I don't expect the city of Danville about the parks to Mitchellsburg or Perryville or Junction City and build a park, but you have to be realistic and understand that we're going to need to use some of our money to do that because that's an important quality of life that those people deserve.
And I agree with that too.
I don't think that, I mean, speaking on, when I'm listening, I'm just listening because my first voice. And I think there's no preconceived notion of how much we're saying the county should or shouldn't give. I just think it's a open conversation of, are you interested? What would you want?
Yeah, we are.
More than what you're giving out or not? You know, what are you interested in developing in Danville? Nothing, or in the county? I think it's an open conversation, not a, hey, we want you to get $5 million. I don't think anybody said that. That's just my opinion.
Well, the implication is you all want us to pony up an equal amount.
No, nobody asked that.
Never said
I didn't say.
No.
That's what the mayor said here.
No, I did not say that, no.
You said jointly, not as I didn't really like that.
I specifically asked the questions.
Well, Jason, let me say this to you. But, if you should do what the mayor said that it's important that they put Boyle County Parks and Rec stay together. I never said anything about the amount of money. We showed you the numbers because of one thing. Why do we show those numbers? Because you always say you don't ever get the information. Well, excuse my French, you got the information today. And these folks back here going to give you information in the county escrow. I never want to be accused of trying to hide the data, the correct information from midnight. And that to me implies all the citizens of Danville and Boyle County, not just the court, but all the citizens of the right to this information.
Yeah, I shouldn't have to ask for it, that's the point. When I have an agreement that says you'll provide it to me, I shouldn't have to ask for it.
Well,
And that was the point, that was the problem we had in the past.
well, let me ask you this.
And I said 10 minutes ago, I said, today's a new day, let's move forward. And then we started back with the comment about the city pays taxes too, and that's where we kind of started back, so.
It's important that you represent your people.
Yeah.
And one way to represent your people is that if you have knowledge that you think that you're not being given, then I'm begging you in public to ask the mayor, to ask the city manager, and we shall find a way to get it from you. And if you don't want to ask, use your county judge as time to ask. There's nothing about Parks and Rec that we have not wanted you all to be involved in. Keep in mind that you set up the meeting back in City of Rose and all this stuff got started. And every time we meet, we bring new stuff to the table. That's great. Well, let's don't bring new stuff to the table and let's don't sit and argue about the new stuff or the old stuff. Let's just keep moving forward. I think you all got a chance to hear an update like we did of all the new things that have been done, but also about all the new things that have been proposed. And that's really what you all know. You can't say tomorrow that you don't know the information, that you don't use as much as everybody else that's an elected official knows.
I think we're happy to have the city of the county all in one room.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a really novel thing.
Well, and to what, just discuss what Donna's point is really, and so you've got all these things, right? And not to just talk about inside the city, but you all may say, well, that barn is half on our property. Why don't we just renovate that for you this year? Let's do that. Let's do the county project, and y'all keep on doing what y'all are doing. You know, what the flexibility that is built into this whole model. Ms. Boder may convince you all to say, let me go to Jackson City and spend some money on the baseball field. And what she would do then is take Connor and Josh and as assigned to whoever we assign, and we would go to Jackson City and we'd figure out what that looks like, and we would implement that for you. So you all don't have to do that separately, because the agreement allows us to do that. It gives us the capacity to help execute what those dollars are. So you all, we will not think of everything.
No, I understand.
And so all you all have to do, to Don's point, is you all create a couple of ideas that you're willing to pay for, and you just tell us.
Well, right now, she's already on one.
We're working on it. Yeah, we're working on it. Yeah, and so, just see what I mean? So like, you don't have to answer that right now. You all don't have to talk about the Parable Battlefield right now. You all may go talk to Parable and they come up with a tremendous idea on how to integrate the Parable Battlefield and make it more usable for a wider range of audience. We don't know what that is.
I'm a numbers guy. So just because you put some numbers up on there doesn't mean like, okay, that's what we have to give. If I gave you a receipt that just said $3 million on it and asked you to pay, what would be the first question you ask? What's that $3 million for? That's what we have now. We might have had some numbers, but what I need to know is the meat and potatoes in that. What do those numbers represent? And you know what's nice, even though you don't want me to do it? Jenny here said, well, this is what we spent here, this is what we spent here. Oh, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. And you can't just give me $3 million and expect me to roll over and say, here you go, here's the checkbook. I want to know what we're getting for the $3 million, because you know what?
That's not your $3 million. That's the city commission spent that money, and so they spent it on.
But you are asking me.
Nobody's asking.
No, 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 you are asking, you're asking me to pony up more money so that way you don't have to spend as much.
No, no, no. All we're saying is here's the master plan where it's at. We're gonna progress. We're just going forward. Nobody's asking about the county spending $12 million or $50,000. All we're doing is giving you information as we're going.
When the time comes and you say, we'd like you to contribute more, we need to know what we're spending the money on. Because
yeah,
I have those questions.
Right, that's reasonable. Right.
It's been a great meeting. But you know what? You and Tom both said you've been asking City all these questions and City can give you all the answers. That's fine. But after today, you've been asked professionally and courteously to go to the city manager.
No, Jenny wrote down on the paper right here, when I asked the question about 3.1 million, what was that 3.1 million for?
Well, you could have asked it right here. See, my thing is this. We have a process that we want you all to be aware of, and we want to ask you to follow our process. And I'm going to follow my process. I'm going to always go through the judge and take the city manager. And part of my process is I send the city manager to go spend time with the judge. I don't even show up, but I trust the city manager, the judge, to make some decisions on behalf of this whole county. That's just how I operate. But anytime you've got a question about something about the expenditure of money, ask the city. And I'll direct, like I did earlier, to direct my commissioners, our commissioners, to take it to the city manager. We've had those conversations before. That's not new for us. You asked City right there, and I appreciate her doing that. But you know what? That answer you got should have been the answer everybody else got. Yes, hopefully everybody will get the same answer. I'm big in sharing, okay? And that's all I'm trying to do. This meeting is about sharing with the city and county what these guys have proposed for us, and then for us to decide where should we go, how do we get there together. And those were the two things about this meeting today. And nobody asked you to give an X amount of money, showed you what's going on. And if somebody wants to know what it costs to do the barn, somebody wants to know what it costs to do the baseball field, or somebody wants to know something else, then you go to these guys early, they'll get those answers for you. Because they're our employees right now in the city.
Yes, we are.
And they're responsible. But that doesn't mean you can't ask them questions. Well, hey, yeah, I'll talk to you. I don't want to send us your bill, but they can talk about this. They understand we're working together.
I love the new magistrates. It was informative to learn where the 322 goes and how it's divided up. I think that was the most important thing.
Yeah.
And I know Paul has had some neat ideas to bring towards the new director, very inexpensive ideas to the county wants to participate. He had no idea. So there's some positive in this communication.
Okay.
Yeah. So thank you guys.
What you mean is positive though, it's got to be information. It's information. Because you hear all kinds of rumors about what's been said, what's not been said, what's been told, what's not been told. And I think today, and I want to thank you all for giving the afternoon for this meeting, because we've all been told the same thing.
I think we need to carry on. This is just the beginning.
Yes.
Start.
Yes.
Got to start somewhere.
Yes.
And I started when I was 1 year old. I threw my diaper off, moved down.
Is that when you expanded the sewer system?
We moved to the south end of Danville, lived Paula Heights, and my dad went and bought 2 push mowers, new ones, November 4th. Big ones. Wouldn't self-propel, you push. Fortunately, I wasn't big enough to push. But my older brother was, Gigi, and Daddy, once a week on Friday, all the men and the boys old enough to push mowers met at the car at Paula Heights. And they put all of that from one end to the other. Since then, I saw Paula Heights, I Ron Kennedy, we all remember him. He was a photographer for African Master. He took my picture. I was playing in sandbox. Had it all over me. He took my picture. Lo and behold, come out on the front page of that. And there I stood with my tuba pole, and in shorts and a t-shirt, and sand all over. But I've seen Paul Heights disappear. And the reason it disappeared, it was the people. It wasn't government. But we went there, my parents, and all the other kids' parents in that neighborhood, they met every week. They manicured, they maintained, and took care of it. And Charlie Onstock, who owned the property, had signed it over to us to have a park in Paul Heights. And in the contract, it said, it shall go back to him if it's not maintained. But Big got holes in the roof, playground equipment was torn up, park's gone. There is, however, Charlie Onstock was the type of man, he didn't want to see me wasted for a community. And there is a senior citizen center, and it's still there today, at Paul Heights. And I can go out there and I can look down where that sandbox used to be. And remember a whole lot of years growing up as a kid, playing in that park. Softball, whatever it might be, dodgeball, whatever else they had going on, we get in the games. But that's who we're about. We're about these kids out here that have nothing. And we sit up here as adults, and we act like it's ours, and it's us, and it's not. It's them. Until we get the vision, it's them. We won't ever be able to meet together. We'll close another park, and then move back.
Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Can I pass the plate then? And I choose. Well, it has been good. Let's do it for our kids. Why don't we do this? Why don't we ask the city manager and the county judge to go ahead and get a calendar together, and let's try to plan something like this once every quarter. What is Parks and Rec, or just say some cool guy time?
We can cuss and argue, get along.
We'll get reports from law here before the same time. Yeah. You've been asking for it. First time I mentioned you, so I'll you guys have anything else for us?
No, this has been great.
Just go to the prayer.